Hi there. This is Frater IAC, and here I come with a new video. This time, we're going to be talking about sensory imagination, and that's in step two. And the thing is, this is such a big unit, and these skills are so important that I've chosen in this particular video just to look at visual and auditory. We will be looking at the kinesthetic or feeling and the olfactory and gustatory, otherwise known as smell and taste, in other videos, in the next video, because this is so important and these are so fundamental. The steps one and two are the fundamental skills that you're going to take with you and use every day as you ascend through the steps in initiation into hermetics. They are that important. Um, the act of introspection, wherein you gain control. Well, let's just look at the next slide. You, by the way, compliments to Google Gemini artificial intelligence image generator because that's where this image came from. And consider this young lady, but consider what this picture is telling us. Um, she has a physical body. She has an astral body, and then at a higher level, she has a mental body. And then there's the whole causal body, and there's a whole series of bodies. And your higher self, when you ascend up the tree of life to the realm of knowledge, Da'at, which is between Tiferet and Keter, that's where God meets you and you connect with God. You connect with the Godhead, and the Godhead becomes you. So we are multidimensional beings. Okay, the first thing we got to talk about here is this young woman is more than her physical body. Let me repeat that. You are more than just your physical body. Now, most of us, in fact, our entire materialistic society, and we are profoundly materialistic, treats us as if the body, the clay vessel that carries around your emotions and your mind and your spirit, they treat it as if it's the end all and be all, but it's not. Your being is much larger than your physical body. It extends beyond and it's multidimensional, just like the universe is multidimensional. If you read in quantum physics, you know, uh, it is very clear, and scientists are now treating the multidimensionality of the universe as being, you know, a serious concept. They're not laughing that off anymore because it's true. So you are, and I know this sounds trite, but I'm going to say it anyway. You are a being of light and spirit having a physical experience. You've chosen to come here and inhabit your own clay vessel, your own physical body, so that you can learn, develop, and ascend spiritually or not. Always our choice. So now, the other thing I want to talk about here just briefly is nourishment. If your being is multidimensional, then how do you nourish? How do you feed each level? Right. So you think about your physical body. Hey, it's got to breathe. Try holding your nose shut, in your mouth, and you're going to last about however long you can hold your breath. So you got to have air. You have to have warm. Good idea to have shelter. And of course, you need food and water. Those are the building blocks that nourish your physical vessel that carries everything around in this dense material plane. But you are a much larger being, and you're also much more powerful than you might think you are. In fact, each of us, even the uninitiated, have phenomenal, miraculous, huge power. Okay? Every time you feel something, every time you think a thought, feel a feeling, see a color, that is nourishing your other bodies. Those things are multidimensional. So I think, and Barton actually says this, he talks a lot about nourishment. And he talks about how the physical body is nourished with breathing, but in order to nourish the astral body, what we do, and the mental body, what we do is we infuse the air that we're about to breathe with an idea, a thought, a concept, a feeling, a thought form. And when we breathe that in, it goes into our lungs and it pumps air through our bloodstream and so on. But that idea, that concept, that thing that we have infused the air with goes through what Barden calls the astral matrix, which is, the boundary between your physical body and the astral body. That concept goes into your astral body, it goes into your mental body, and it nourishes them as well. Very, very important. Now, just reflect on this whole concept of how you nourish your bodies. And by the way, does that did what I just described, I mean, did that ring a bell with you? I mean, that's the magic of breathing. It's the magic of eating. It's the magic of drinking. You're actually infusing your breath and your food, with thoughts, feelings, concepts. And so you are transmuting your negative characteristics on your soul mirror into their respective virtues. That's what we're doing here. And these exercises help with that. This is all part of that thing that I call active introspection. So here we go. We'll leave this young lady to her meditation and move on to this happy little slide. You can see, I love this picture here, the gustatory thing. Gustatory is the taste, the sense of taste, right? And these senses are really important. And essentially what you're doing in step 2 in this whole sensory imagination thing is you're learning how to nourish your astral and mental bodies with starting with the senses. Now you have your sensory organs. These are actually the sensory organs. And, kinesthetic, I symbolize that with a hand. That's the sense of touch. That's feeling. But, your entire body feels, because the skin is your biggest organ. But then you have a nose, you got a tongue, you got an ear, you got an eye, and there they are. But guess what? Here's the secret. You're not going to be using your eyes and your ears to do this visual and auditory imagination. You're going to be using your brain, because your brain is your body's ultimate sense organ. Yeah, you got your ears, you got your eyes, but guess what? You have a corpus callosum, and you've got a pineal gland, you've got, your hypothalamus, you've got your pituitary gland, you got your corpus callosum, all of it. That's your ajna chakra. That's your astral and mental perception. That's what that is. So you're going to be activating parts of the brain to do this. And your consciousness is beyond just the brain. The brain is just like the microchip that fits in your physical body and interprets your greater consciousness, which is not necessarily even housed in your physical body. Because remember, you're larger than your physical body. You are a multidimensional being. So you're going to be using your brain as an organ of perception. Haha. So now that we have that context, let's go on. And by the way, I'm disappointed in this. This was a GIF or a GIF, a GIF. It's one of those files. And the skull it was so cool. When I set up the slides, I was like, wow, it's so cool because it revolves. Well, guess what? It's not revolving in this slideshow. But imagine it revolving. And the other thing I'd like to point out, look how human that image looks. It's got arms, it's got legs, it's got eyes, and then it has this red thing on top, which is like the corpus callosum. But that whole thing is fascinating, you know. So anyway, but enough of that. This isn't really a lecture on the brain chemistry, but it kind of is. So anyway, let's move on and just know you're not going to be using your actual eyes. You're going to start off with your eyes, but you're going to take that that after image and put it in your mind's eye, your ajna, your astral eye, your third eye. That's what we're doing here, because that third eye is the organ of perception, and because it's more than an eye, it's a third ear, it's a third tongue, it's a third hand, and so on. You get the idea. So anyway, enough of that. Now, look at this little guy. He is reading closely. I recommend that you reread this entire unit in Initiation into Hermetics. We've already gone through the auto suggestion at this point, right? So and auto suggestion is a way of nourishing your larger or subconscious mind. But way back to the concept of nutrition. But read this very closely, because as with all things Barden, you really got to read closely what he says, because you're going to be using all of it. Okay. So anyway, let's just read this one little snippet. So in order to start this exercise, which is the exercise of visual imagination, you're going to obtain everyday objects. A fork, a cigarette case, a pencil, a matchbox. Cigarette case, not so much. Much more common in Barden's era than our era now. So forget the cigarette case, but, a knife, a fork, a pencil, a matchbox, a fingernail clipper. And then fix your eyes on an object of your choice, just one. Okay? So you're going to take one of those objects and you're going to fix your eyes on it. Now, the eyes are interesting, because what happens if you gaze at something, if you stare at something, what you're doing, and you're just staring at it to take it in, you are memorizing, creating an imprint in your brain of every feature of that object. Then he says, close your eyes and attempt to visualize the object plastically the way it looks in reality. I do not like the word attempt because I'm with Yoda on this one. There is no try, there's only do. You know, just close your eyes and visualize it because you can already do this. Okay, just try it. Have a little fun with it. You know, look at something and then close your eyes and pay attention to the after image. That's what we're doing here. All righty. So here we have a fingernail clipper. Excuse me. The fingernail clipper actually is how I broke through with this exercise. So it is an esteemed magical artifact. My actual fingernail clipper that I used. I still have that clipper. So and here's a ballpoint pen. Here's a lighter. Here's a pair of reading glasses, and then you got a pencil. Whatever. Just it's your choice. And Barton says this exercise is complete when you can visualize an object for 5 minutes with your eyes closed without interruption. Then you move into part two and you do the same thing but with your eyes open. Now, there's a trick to that, and we will talk about that. Um, these objects should be suspended in the air and appear before your eyes so plastically that you can almost reach out and touch them. But again, it is your brain, your corpus callosum, your pineal gland, which is actually visually activated. The pineal gland it helps process visual images in the brain. That's your organ of perception. So they're suspended in the air and they're appearing before your physical eyes, but your physical eyes aren't looking, they aren't connecting with them. You're staring beyond. Okay. You know, like those things where you have an image that's like in front of you and it looks like kind of a just an image, and then you don't focus on it and you see another image come up. I don't know what that's called, but it's the same concept here. You know, you're not focusing on the object with your physical eyes, you're focusing on the object with your astral eye. Got it? So now, well, let's try it. um why don't we look at whatever object you choose, because you're you and I'm me. And just because a fingernail clipper worked with me, that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So pick something and please make it something simple. Don't start off with a tarot card. A lot of people start off this with a tarot card. Oh, that's a good idea. No, 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 because you're learning the basic skill. After you learn the basic skill, yes, you're definitely going to be able to use it with tarot cards. And in fact, you're going to be able to enter the tarot cards. It's the same concept as the magic mirror. You're entering the tarot card, but you're not doing that now. You're just looking at a fingernail clipper. So look at that fingernail clipper. And why don't we do that? Let's look at, with your physical eyes, the object of your choice. So put it in front of you, and I'm going to give us 30 seconds, okay? And we're going to look at our respective object with our physical eyes. All right, begin. Okay, that was 30 seconds. Now, close your eyes. and look at the after image. Strengthen the after image in your mind's eye. Don't strain your physical eyes. That was a mistake I made when I was first doing this. Forget about your physical eyes. They're not your organ of perception. You're doing it with your brain, your pineal gland, your ajna chakra. And so look at that after image and recreate that. Flesh it out. Make it exist in your mind's eye. Right in front of you. Right in front. All right? That's what you're doing. Now let's try it again for another 30 seconds with a second object. So get rid of the first thing, right? Put your second object, again, a simple object, a pencil, a pen, a lighter, whatever, okay? Something simple. And let's repeat that exercise. So remember, you're going to stare or gaze at the object. You're going to caress it with your eyes. You're going to memorize every detail of the object. And then you're going to shut your eyes and you're going to visualize that in your mind's eye. And you're going to flesh it out to where it exists just the same as it did in front of your your physical eyes. Now it's going to exist as a thought form in your mind's eye. And we're going to talk about this a little more, but let's go ahead and do this exercise with our second object. Okay, begin. Okay, it's been 30 seconds. Now close your eyes and see the object as an after image. And you know, when I do this, it's really interesting. I feel sort of a pulsing in the ajna area of my, the ajna chakra. You probably won't right at first, but feel that. Look at that image in your mind's eye. See every detail of it. Because guess what? When you get to I think it's step 7, 8, 9, the later steps, you're going to start learning how to astral travel, how to mental travel. And there's a guy named William Buhlman who wrote a bunch of books about astral travel, and he is brilliant. His work is very good. And the reality on the astral realm is when you go out into the astral realm, some areas are pretty, I mean, you'll go into a garden or whatever, and it's been created in the imaginations of millions of people. Those are like the heavens, like the Buddhist heaven, the Islamic heaven, the Christian heaven. Those are created by millions of people that had this image and it exists. But then there are other areas in the astral realm where it's completely thought responsive. I mean, absolutely thought responsive. You go in there, and whatever you think becomes it pops right up. It's like instantaneous. And so I'd like to call your attention to a really good series of books written by C.S. Lewis. They're called The Chronicles of Narnia. And C.S. Lewis was part of a group called the Inklings, and that included Tolkien. And so they talked about things. And C.S. Lewis the Chronicles of Narnia is a series of children's tales about these kids that go into this land called Narnia. Well, anyway, one of the volumes is titled The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And apparently what happened is these seven lords or nobles in Narnia sailed off into the horizon and they disappeared. And so Prince Caspian, who is a noble in his own right, commissions a vessel called the Dawn Treader. And the Dawn Treader sets out across the ocean to find these seven lost lords. So the seventh lord, his name is Roop, Rhoop, and Lord Roop um, was insane by the time they found him. He needed some TLC because he had been stranded on the island where dreams come true. Think about that for a minute. Because that's right out of the old Twilight Zone, you know. Because at first you think, oh yeah, dreams come true. Wow, that's really cool. Ha ha. No, because what if it's a nightmare? Well, a nightmare is going to come true also. And that's what happened to Roop. And, the poor guy was just a mess, man. He hadn't slept. His hair was all disheveled. He was wearing rags. He was freaked out. And he was just desperate. And so you have to realize that these steps, this is why they're so important. This is the context, okay? Your mission in steps 1 and 2 of initiation into Hermetics is to create the foundation of control over your feelings and thoughts. Because you have to completely control your feelings and thoughts to control the elements within you and then begin to wield them externally. But you also, when you're exploring the greater multidimensional universe, you you have to understand these concepts that you're building your perception and you're building your control because you're incredibly powerful. So you always have to be careful how you talk to you, what you allow yourself to feel, think, say, and do. And I have an incomplete sentence here because I was thinking about this aphantasia. Because a lot of people say, well, I can't visualize. And you know, I have learned over the course of my own ascent that see may be kind of a loose word to describe what is a greater perception. So don't force it. Chill. Just take it easy. Do the exercise as perfectly as you can and don't even worry about the results because I guarantee you're going to be able to visualize, that these skills will grow in you. So keep on plugging. Now, let's go on. Let's try it with a crow. I love crows. This could be a raven. I think it's a crow. Crows generally have, like straighter beaks, and ravens kind of have a more curvy beak, but they have that kind of feather fur on the top of. They're just so cool. I love birds. Okay, but these particular birds, these crows, are phenomenal. So let's try this with something else. You're going to go out in nature. You're going to take a walk. Go to the park. Sit on a bench. Look at what's in front of you. Gaze at what's in front of you. A tree, a bird, a stone. Just gaze upon it. Memorize every little detail. Just intimate. Let your gaze play over it. Let your gaze caress it. And then shut your eyes and build the afterimage in your astral eye. Do that. And practice this. Because I'll tell you something, okay? You're going through the soul mirror. That is a painstaking process, and I cannot stress how important active introspection is to gain this elemental equilibrium, because unless you have this, you're going to enter into some pretty dangerous places over time. But if you have the equilibrium, you're going to be fine. So get the equilibrium. So you're doing your soul mirror exercises using the big five in a sustained effort over an extended period of time. Do this stuff as part of that practice each day. Do this as a sustained effort over that same period of time, because you've got to build these skills, because you are gosh, by the time you get to step 7 or 8 or 9, yeah, your perception is going to be off the charts. It's incredible how little most people perceive. And what you're doing is expanding your consciousness and deepening your perception. That's what this does, among other things. So, anyway, enough of that. We'll say goodbye to our friend the crow, but they are wonderful, noble birds. Okay, enough of that. Let's look at a different way. Look at this little guy. You're ready to cook something and you discover you're out of a key ingredient. So you got the hamburger helper, but you don't have the hamburger. Ha ha! You got to go to the store. Ah! Look at him. Isn't he cute? Um, so he discovers he has to go to the store. I want you to put yourself in this situation. All right? So you're ready to cook something, you discover you're out of the key ingredient, you got to go to the store. Now, close your eyes, and what we're going to do is take a little trip to the store. But you're going to do that in your mind's eye. So imagine yourself going out to the garage, getting in your car, driving to the store that you usually shop at, parking the car, getting out, going into the store. Now imagine how the store is and pinpoint the location where you know your key ingredient is going to be. In the store I shop at, that key ingredient is in the back of the store in the middle, because that's where the meat is. And so imagine yourself taking a cart, walking back through the aisles to the meat display, looking over the hamburger packets and buying some hamburger. So you're going to put it in the cart, you're going to take it to the cash register, you're going to check out, you're going to go back to your car, you're going to drive back home, and you're going to get out and go back in, and now you've got your ingredients. So why don't we take about a minute and go through that thought exercise? All right. So remember, you've discovered you're out of an ingredient, so you're going to put the store where you're going to get that ingredient, the grocery store you usually shop at, and you're going to imagine yourself going to the grocery store, going into the store, going through the store to where the product is, getting the product, putting it in your cart, going up, checking out, going back out to your car, and going home. That's what we're doing here. And I'm going to time us. I'm going to time us for a minute. Go. All righty. You spent a minute doing that. Now, you are armed with several exercises that you can do over and over. Always do these exercises concurrently with the exercises that you're doing with the big five. Make your day magical. Get up in the morning, you do your auto suggestions before you get out of bed. You do the magic of washing, you do the magic of eating and drinking, you do the magic of breathing. Then you do your visual, your sensory imagination exercises, and then you end off your day with a nice set of auto suggestions right before you drift off to sleep. Do this, and you will make real progress. All right, let's move on. Now we're going to try it with our eyes open. So here's this little guy. I'm not sure what his shirt says. Some kind of matter. I don't know. Who knows? Who cares? But here he is. He's got a t-shirt. And now he's practicing these exercises with his eyes open. But remember, he's not actually using his eyes. He's using his astral eye, his third eye, his ajna center, his pineal gland. That's what he's using as the organ of perception. And so he's going to stare or gaze at that very same object. And then he's going to turn his gaze in a different direction, but he's going to take that after image with him, and it's going to sit right out in front of him, and he's going to look beyond it because it's his astral eye that is going to perceive the actual fingernail clipper sitting out there in front of him. And, this takes a little practice. Don't give up on it. You got to learn to do this with your eyes open. So, it's just what you're doing, okay? When you close your eyes, your eyelids are covering your physical eyes. So that was easy, all right? But this time, you're not closing your eyes, but you're transferring the image to your astral eye. I hope that made sense. But the reality is, you have to learn to visualize this fingernail clipper or whatever object sitting out in front of you, and your eyes, you're just going to defocus your eyes. You're going to deactivate your physical eyes. You're just leaving them open. But you're transferring that image to your astral eye. So why don't we try that for about 30 seconds? So put your fingernail clipper or whatever object you're using, put it in front of you on the desk. Okay. Now gaze at it, and if you want some change, use a new object. Doesn't matter. Old one, new one, all of them, whatever. But use one at a time, and you're going to gaze at this object again until you've memorized every last little detail of it. Then, instead of closing your eyes, you're going to turn your head, but you're going to take that after image with you. And instead of straining your physical eyes, you're going to flesh out that image right there in front of your open eyes with your third eye. Start now. Let's do it for a few seconds. Well, there we go. There you have it. You have now done these exercises with, I hope, some success. So the reality is, you know, keep practicing, get good at it. You know, it doesn't take that long. Okay, now we're into auditory imagination. Oh, this is your ears. So let's look at what Barton says. And again, be like this little fella. Peruse this. Read it closely. Make sure you're reading it, and you should have read it several times so that you understand every nuance of it, because that's how Barton is. You really got to delve deeply into his instructions and ask yourself, why am I doing this? What is he getting at here? Okay, so now let us begin with the acoustic concentration exercise. Imagine that you hear the ticking of a wall clock. This exercise is like all the previous ones. In the beginning, you can only do it for a few seconds, but as you practice, it's going to get better. For purposes of control, use a mala or a rosary. Use a string of beads and record all interferences in your magical diary. I told you before, you should definitely be keeping a journal, because when you do that and you're faithful with keeping that journal, that's your instruction manual. That's what you have found out for yourself as you have walked this path. Because you can listen to me all day, but the reality is, it's only a map until you actually set foot on that path and walk that path. So don't be a map maker, be a walker of the path. All right. So with perseverance, going to get better. So use your mala, use your beads to continue, and then continue by imagining you hear the ticking of a pocket watch or a wristwatch, then the pealing of a bell in all its different modulations. Many other acoustic concentration experiments can be done. The sound of a gong, the sound of a hammer, tapping sounds, various other sounds, scratching, scraping, slurping, and thunder, from the gentle rustling of the wind to a raging storm, the roaring of a waterfall, the lapping of waves on the shore. And later, musical sounds, a violin, a piano, other instruments. This is a fun exercise. At least it is to me. Because, you can already do this, okay? I guarantee it. All right. Have you ever, let's just do a thought experiment really quick, okay? Have you ever been, just like minding your own business, doing whatever it is you're doing, and all of a sudden a song comes to mind? I call those brain worms, so you end up getting this song stuck in your head, and you're it's going on and on and on in your head. That's this. That's what this is. So guaranteed, you can already do this. All you're doing is adding a little bit of discipline to it and learning to do it at will. But you already know how. So anyway, let's look. Again, you're going to be using the brain as your organ of perception. Uh, you have, and I, for the life of me, I can't find an image of, the cranial nerves. 'Cause, the vagus nerve and all that, that's very powerful stuff. But, it's just not on there unless you're willing to pay big bucks for access to the picture because everything's for sale in our grossly materialistic world. But the reality is, the brain is going to be the organ of perception. Now, the lobes of your brain have different functions, right? So you're going to have the sensation of touch is in this bright green thing, and that's called the parietal lobe, right? Your hearing, which was not capitalized in this diagram, uh, I don't know how I'm going to be able to deal with that emotionally, without a capitalized H. But that said, your hearing comes from this kind of hot pink section, which is your temporal lobe. So you have a lot of things. Your brain processes a lot of things. And it's got a right side, it's got a left side, you've got your medulla oblongata, you've got your brain stem, you have your cranial nerves, you've got the corpus callosum and that whole ajna area. I mean, it's fascinating. And then, of course, your occipital lobe here toward the back of the brain, that's what processes your vision and color perception. And by the way, when you're practicing these visual imagination exercises, try it with a color, right? You know, um, because it's really good to like be versatile. You're not just doing objects, you're doing colors, and you're not just doing sounds from things like drums and trumpets and pianos, which, I mean, I had the hardest time with this. I'll tell you what, um, when I was doing the auditory perception part, I mistakenly tried to imagine a clock on a wall ticking, and that was the hard. I just couldn't do it. I mean, I just tried and tried and tried and tried, and no go, no can do. And, I got really discouraged. And then I thought, well, why don't I try something else? Why don't I try a gong? So I did. I tried a gong. And then I tried drumming, and I would listen because I like sounds, and I use sounds every day in my practice. And so, you know, um, what I did is I did it with a drum, and I imagined a bongo, and how that sounds when somebody's doing the bongo. And then I thought about a coal miner tap, tap, tapping inside the rock, inside the mine, and they're tap, tapping to clear away the dirt from around the ore that they're looking for. So imagine that. Imagine, in fact, this might be good. And what Barton says here, and this is important, okay? One of the things that he says is don't visualize the piano. Don't visualize the bongo drum. Don't visualize the trumpet or the gong or the hammer tap, tap, tapping inside a mine. Don't visualize, don't see it, just hear it. You're isolating. Barden wants you to learn to isolate these sensory images or these sensory imaginations. So, okay, so why don't we try this? Okay. And I think what we're going to do Instead of imagining a musical instrument, I just thought these images were cool. Instead of that, we're going to do a little bit of a thought exercise here. I want you to shut your eyes and you're going to imagine you are completely in darkness because you're down inside a mine and you're surrounded by a darkness so thick you can almost cut it with a knife. Silence is as profound as the darkness. But wait, you hear a tap. You hear the sound of a small hammer tapping on the rock. Tap, 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 tap. And just sit with that. Hear that for a time in your mind's ear, using your brain as the organ of perception. And you're hearing it in your mind's ear. You're not seeing it in your mind's eye because you're encased in profound darkness, because you're down in a mine. All right, so let's do that for 30 seconds. Shut your eyes. Imagine you're in a profoundly dark place, deep in a mine, and then you're going to hear the tap, tap, tapping of rock hammers. Begin. Okay, that'll do it. That's kind of a fun way to start this exercise because, again, what Barden is getting at is you are learning to isolate these senses because these are your astral and mental senses. Okay. And you're learning to isolate them so that you can understand what each one does with your perception. Now, later, we're going to be refining this and we're going to be adding multi-sensory impressions. We're going to be taking walks in our mind's eye. We're going to be walking through gardens or hallways or whatever, and we're going to be using all of our senses. But right now, all you're doing, you're isolating the astral hearing, the mental hearing. That's what you're doing. Okay. So now we've done that. And we're about done here. In the next video, I'm going to do the kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory imagination. I plan on publishing that next Saturday. And until then, be blessed.